All right, so I've been having a few ideas. Now, um, I think I want to have a more deeper, philosophical, intellectual conversation. Not that I'm the smartest guy in the world, but I want to get a little bit deeper. So, I have this theory about, I don't know if it's a theory, but it's this idea that basically everything alive, right? All animals in the animal kingdom have created patterns, and their patterns have led us to predict future outcomes, which has led to survival. Obviously, the whole goal of basically life, arguably, is to continue to survive. Um, so I guess going back, I think the there's two things that we want that will help us survive. One is to have like a community, a mate, right? Somebody to love and to be around, and a group of friends, people that we can use to improve our survival. And the other is actual survivability, as in food, water, air, shelter, money, stuff like that, right? Um, so we have self survival, which is getting the goods, right? Food and water. And we have the community survival. So in our lives, we have recognized patterns that we've used to now increase our chances of survival. You can go as basic as like hearing a rustling in the bush means you get out of the way because it could be a lion. And more complicated things than that. And so we create these patterns in order to increase survival. And so we begin to have these feelings that we might be right because, well, if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're alive, which means your patterns so far have been true. And so in order to kind of tell ourselves that we're doing right, we find people that affirm our patterns. What gets tricky, and where I'm starting to kind of gauge my mind on, is this idea of fear and anger. Obviously, right now, if you look around, there is a ton of anger. Everywhere you look, seems like somebody's pretty upset about something. So, I started looking a little bit deeper than that, of just, it's not just anger. There has to be something that's triggering an anger response. Because if it was just a topic, then we would all be angry about the exact same thing. But some people aren't angry at some things, and some people are really angry at some things. Which means I don't think it's the instance or the act itself that is angering. I think there's something else happening. So I started thinking about like what would make me really angry, and why do I get angry at some things more than others. And I started thinking that a lot of my anger is either due to fear or it's due to like a shift in my pattern, which kind of ties together. So let's say your life, everything that you've lived through, and all the experiences and knowledge and social media posts, whatever you think, your life, you've seen all even numbers. And so you would predict that the pattern continues to be even numbers. And then in my life, I've witnessed mostly odd numbers. I think I'm gonna sneeze. I'm gonna sneeze on camera because I can do that. Sure did. See, completely unedited. All right, so I've had all odd numbers. And so I would predict that the pattern moving forward is going to be odd. You would be correct in that your predictions are right because your pattern has shown you to be right. And my pattern has shown me to be right. But if you were to ask us what the next number would be, I would give an odd number and you would give an even number. And one of us is wrong and one of us is right. Now, obviously the world is much more complex than odd and even numbers. But this is the patterns we recognized. So then I started thinking about, so why would something upset me from that? And I started thinking about those old paper mazes. You have like a pen and like try to find your way through the maze. Now let's say we had a race. You have to get through the maze as fast as you can, and I have the exact same maze, and I have to get through it as fast as I can. We're being timed. And whoever gets to the end first wins. So we both start, and there comes a fork in the maze. You don't really know which way to go, but you want to beat me. So you go left, and I go right. And as we progress through this, there is a fear that we would both have that the direction we picked was wrong. And now the other person's going to win, which makes you, obviously, we'll say, survive. And my chances of survival get diminished. And so we have this fear that as we're going through that we might have been led on the wrong path, but there is no going back, at least not in life, because you can't reverse time and choose a different way. But I guess that'd be a topic for another day. And so we're trying to figure out how to get through our maze with the data we have, hoping that the predictions we're making are correct based on the information we've been given. And now you look back at like going back to that fear idea. So now, if you ask us odd or even, and I say even and you say odd, or I think I was odd and you were even, whatever. One of us is right and one of us is wrong. If I'm right, then your chance of survival is diminished. If you're right, then my chance of survival is diminished. And neither one of us want to have a diminished chance of survival. We both want to live. And so, what I think is happening is there's a disconnect from understanding that the patterns we're seeing are differing from each other. I see all odd numbers, and when you predict a 10, I just think you're stupid. I'm like, why would it possibly be a 10? What would give you that idea? And if I say it's 11, and you'd be like, are you an idiot? Or why would you possibly say it's 11? Now, if we want to assume that we're all intelligent, because we're told we're the most intelligent species, right? So we're all intelligent. If I'm giving you an odd number, it would be safe to assume that you think I'm being malicious. Because if you're right, and your pattern is going to lead to a higher chance of survival, then me trying to change the pattern is going to disrupt that. And now it's going to end survival for both of us. Conversely, I think it's all odds. So if you give an even number, then I think you're being malicious and that you're trying to disrupt the pattern. And I think this is where the fear comes from, in that one, we're wrong. And if we're wrong, then how long have we been wrong for? How long have I been on the wrong path in my maze? But I've made it this far, so how could I possibly be wrong? And if I'm not wrong, then you must be wrong. And if you're wrong, then you're disrupting society's ability to survive. But I think we all think that. We all are on this maze, hoping that the way we've picked is the correct way based on what we've experienced so far. And then when we see things that sort of disrupt the pattern, as all of my odd numbers start to play out, and there's a random 14 in there, I kind of look at it and I'm like, that's weird. That doesn't belong here. So my mind goes, that must be wrong. It must be an incorrect number, right? Like, clearly it's all odd numbers. This one doesn't belong here. So now in the face of new information that could potentially change your pattern, which will change your predictions, which could possibly mean you are wrong the whole time, what do we do in the face of that? And I think that's where, like, obviously, like, cognitive dissonance comes from, and the other, like, ideas that we're like adverse to it, that we don't want to see it, so we just choose to throw the information out. We just say that the information was wrong, or that it's malicious, right? Like, it's not correct. I'm correct. That even number has no purpose being here. So for it to be here means someone's messing with me, right? And I think when it goes back to that idea of fear and losing your survival, again, there's two things that you need to survive: as a group and basic goods. And if your pattern is disrupted, then I think there's a fear that you're going to be kicked out of the group, or lose a mate, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And if you lose the group, the likelihood of you gaining goods is greatly diminished. If you think back of, like, caveman times, you would need a group. You can't take on a tiger by yourself. You can't possibly make and maintain your shelter while also getting water, while also getting food, all at the same time. That seems quite impossible. Now, I know times have changed, we're not cavemen anymore, but I think the same concept applies. And if we're losing our ability to get goods, and we're being ostracized from a group, then our chance of survival and our happiness gets severely diminished. And so I think this is why we get so hard pressed on, like, our beliefs and our, like, stances, is because I cannot be wrong, but you can't be wrong either. And so I sort of have this, like, gut feeling that, again, we think of each other as intelligent, and if you are suggesting an even number, in my case, then I think you're being malicious. I think you're probably stupid. You're being malicious, and you're trying to end the survival of the group. You're actively trying to end it. And I can't have that, right? I want the group to survive. If you want to sabotage your group, then go sabotage your own group. Don't come sabotage mine. Don't sabotage our ability to survive. Go do it to yourself. And I think all opposing sides sort of have this idea. Now, there's many ways you can kind of spin this and say they're manipulating data. the way that we're receiving our information and the patterns we're recognizing is a much different conversation. Or you can read the book I wrote. That's kind of what this whole talk is, the book I wrote. About social media and commercials and what we see on Instagram and why our phones want us to keep looking, so we'll constantly feed you stuff you agree with. And if you're constantly being fed stuff that you agree with, and our phones, the media, something is artificially perpetuating our patterns, then you would only assume that you're ever right, because the information you have will always support you, and any information that is against your pattern is clearly malicious and wrong. And I think that's where a lot of our fear is that somebody that's on the opposite side of whatever topic we're talking about, we think that their baseline premise is either they're trying to be malicious or they're incredibly stupid and they're no smarter than dogs. And I don't think that is the way to approach it. What I think instead is we need to recognize that our patterns have insufficient information, and that if you take my even numbers and your odd numbers together, they make an entire cohesive application of numbers. And with that, we can predict a much better outcome, right? The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If we put our minds together, I believe we could have a much better solution to whatever topic we're discussing. Instead of my pattern is right, my team agrees with my patterns, therefore you're stupid and we gotta do what I want to do. And if we do what you want to do, there's a chance that we're just gonna die. Or if I have too much dissent and I try to have too much information being thrown to your pattern, I have a real fear that you're just gonna get rid of me. Because now, if I'm the only, we'll call it like rock in your shoe, then you're just gonna remove the rock. And so there's a fear that I think a lot of people have on any side of any topic, that somebody is going to harm them because they're disrupting the pattern, even if the information they're adding to the pattern is correct and is helpful or can be helpful. I, as the odds, don't want to hear your evens because that makes me wrong. And I've been on this path since I was 12. I'm 36 now. So that's 24 years of being on this path. I can't now go backwards in my maze. I'm just going to make you wrong. What if I just eliminate your side of the maze? Or you eliminate mine. You don't like that maybe I'm getting further than you. And so you just choose not to take any of the information I have to say. And now we don't have a cohesive pattern. We don't have an entire sequence because neither one of us want to accept the other's opinion. And so what happens is now we're given these moments. Maybe you're having it right now. Maybe you had it a week ago. Maybe you'll have it in 3 months or 5 years. I don't know, whatever. That you will recognize that something is disrupting the pattern you thought you had, but it might be right. And so we're faced with the actions, or we're faced with the behavior of now what do we do with information that's presented to us that proves us wrong. Can you probably hear the siren? It's loud. And so the anger stems from this fear of survival and being right. Now, what if all of my friends agree with me? But if all of my friends agree with me and we're proven wrong, that means we're kind of like on a sinking ship. And we don't want to think that. We're not going to think that we're all wrong. We can't possibly be wrong, not all of us. So you're wrong. And then you say, well, me and all my friends, we all agree. And we all agree that you're wrong. So you're on the sinking ship. And I say, I think you're on the sinking ship. I think we should go left. I think we should go right. I think we should go left. I think we should go right. And then, you hear my cat? This is where I think we're at. And I think we've had so much influence from media, internet, social media, TV shows, movies, whatever, that either promotes our pattern or disrupts our pattern. And I think when we recognize that something's disrupting our pattern strong enough, we don't really like it. Now, let's say you have 500 even numbers and I throw one odd number at you. You'd probably dismiss it, right? Which is fair to say. I was like, what if I told you the earth isn't round or flat, that it's actually a cube? You'd be like, all right, buddy. But what if you had 500 even numbers and I give you 400 odd numbers? That's an overwhelming amount of information. That's a pretty strong pattern recognition. So it seems like half of the people believe in only odds and the other half think in only evens. But they can't both be right. Right? Oh God, now a car alarm. Unedited, we leave it in, unless it goes too long. Whatever. And so, I start thinking about, again, going back to why I think I get angry at certain things. I think I get angry at certain things because I've known my pattern to be true, and I want to hold myself to the values that I think promotes everybody else's patterns. I don't want to disrupt anybody's. And so I try to live in a way that doesn't eliminate anyone's survival, right? And so drive on the freeway to go to work or come home. And there's always that like guy who does this in traffic, you know, maybe a girl too. I've seen mostly guys. They just swerve in and out, think they're in an IndyCar race. Actually, I saw one guy who was like driving on the shoulder because he didn't want to wait behind everybody. So he just like welcomed himself to the shoulder and just took off. I get angry at that. Like, really angry at that. Because that disrupts my pattern that I try to hold on to keep everybody safe, everybody survives, everybody's pushing forward. We have rules as a society, we got to maintain this, right? But they don't seem to have that. And that like frustrates me. I think I get angry because there's a fear that there are people out there who don't want the best for everyone. They only want what's best for themselves, kind of at any cost, right? And when I see that, I get afraid, and I also get angry. And part of me is probably a little jealous that I'm constantly aware of like everything I do because I don't want to like really upset too many people. But those people just do whatever they want because they want to and because it benefits them more than anybody else, and that's all that really matters. And so there's a fear and anger that I grow because of that. Same thing with trying to be polite in the grocery store. Don't put your cart in the middle. Keep it on one side, preferably on the side that you're shopping on, and not park it on one side and shop on the other. Well, good. That's another time. That's just me, I guess. And so these things make me afraid that there are people out there who don't have the same, I guess, desire to improve the community pattern, but only their own. And that makes me afraid that it's going to decrease my survival, because we have these like lone wolves, right? They just seem to do whatever they want. And that makes me angry, because I think we should be running like gears on a clock and super smooth, and there's no disruptions. But they don't seem to have that. And so you think about that and take it on like a broader scale and think about controversial topics, whatever you think. Whatever stance you're on, there's probably somebody to oppose you. But I think, instead of just getting angry that they have an opposing view, if we don't look at their opposing view as an attack, but we look at it as an experience had that has created their pattern, then I think that's how you gain empathy. Because it's easy to brush somebody off when you create your own reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. So if you've gotten this far, one of my favorite things to do is like these like fun thought experiments. And so one I like to do a lot is imagine you're in traffic and there's a driver ahead of you. We'll say it's an old woman. There's an old woman ahead of you and she's driving really slow. You pull to the side, all angry, look over, see the old woman, you get around her and you take off. So now I say, why do you think she was driving slow? Think of all the possible ways you can think of why she's driving slow. There's always going to probably be one like jerk who's going to be like, oh, she's an old woman. Okay, funny. Got it. Think a little bit deeper. Let's get into our minds and really think of a reason. So a reason I've heard is like, maybe she's on her way to her grandson's birthday party and she has like a birthday cake in the front seat and she doesn't want to ruin it. Like it was her job to get the cake and she doesn't want to like make her son and daughter or whatever upset. So she really wants to preserve this cake for the grandson's birthday. So she's driving really slow to be careful. That's a good one. I've heard, what if she has her grandson in the back seat and she's driving carefully in order to keep him safe? That's fine too. One I had was, what if she just went to the hospital because she had to call 911 because her husband felt a pain in his chest. So she went to the hospital. The husband had a heart attack and he had passed away. And now she's driving back home to the home she's ever known to be with her husband. But when she gets there, he will not ever come home. And so she's driving slow to prolong having to park her car in the driveway and open the door to the home that will forever be abandoned. Now, think of a couple more. What other reasons can you think of why this old woman is driving slow on the road? Is she having dementia? Is it a blood sugar issue? She could just be a bad driver, sure. But when you start to think of other reasons of why this is happening, you start to have more empathy. And when we can be empathetic to someone else's patterns in their life and realize that what I predict is your pattern only harms me and you, then that's not beneficial for anybody. And it's really easy to say, my side's right, your side's wrong. That's easy. It's really easy to dismiss somebody. That's really easy. The challenge is, can you listen to somebody, hear them out, and try to empathize that their pattern is different than yours? And while it may be different, it might not be wrong. And you also have to understand that your pattern, the numbers, the sequence, the data, the experiences you had aren't complete to the world's experiences. I've only ever lived in Southern California and now Colorado. I have no idea what life is like in Maine or Florida or Georgia or Tehran or Russia, anywhere. I don't know what life is like there. I never lived there. To apply what I've learned from California and Colorado to someone living in Pakistan would be like idiotic. You say, why do you, like, that seems crazy. But yet we do that with different ideas, despite not ever getting the chance to even understand or try to understand that the patterns they've recognized, the data they've collected, the experience they've had, the knowledge they have, the things they've learned are different. We could get into the social media thing and say, I think social media is changing the way that we perceive the world. Like recently, very, very recently, like today or yesterday, I've seen people posting about a young man who was hung, I believe at Penn State. They found him hanging in a tree. It's a young African-American man. And it was terrible, right? And there's a lot of people saying, where's the justice? Where's the outcry? Where's the outrage? And it's easy to see or just agree with people who you've already known to agree with. If their pattern's right, your pattern's right, you think you're similar, therefore I'm just going to absorb their information and add it to my pattern. That's pretty easy to do. It's also easy to dismiss someone that you know has a different pattern than you. You're all evens. What have they listened to you for? So instead I wanted to find the story. And tragically, this young man, turns out he, we'll just say, did it himself. And that's heartbreaking. I don't wish that on anybody. For those of you who have been in that dark of a place, you know how dark it can be. And my heart breaks knowing that he was in that kind of turmoil. Law enforcement found there was no foul play. So far, at least in the investigation so far, there's no foul play. We'll just say that. And that's tragic, right? But until you get the full story, you don't know what the pattern is. It's easy to say that somebody did him wrong. That's easy. It's easy just to jump on and say it's because they hate him. But it's also easy to see that the media doesn't want to show stories of young college kids taking their own lives. They don't want to show that and glorify it. They probably don't want to post it in a way that now this young man's family is going to see it all over the internet and people arguing left and right about who did it, who's responsible. And like I wouldn't want to see that. I wouldn't want to see people bickering and fighting over my son's death, right? And so, I guess getting back, I think it's really sad when we see so much anger. And I've always said fear is a huge motivator. Fear is a really big motivator. The fear of not getting spanked by your parents makes you do the right thing. Fear of not getting into college makes you to get good grades. Fear of getting pulled over and arrested keeps you from breaking the law. Fear is a really good motivator. Now when it's life or death, and that fear, I don't think that's anger, right? I think that's an instant, like that spike of adrenaline when you like hear that like sounds in the middle of the night. That is not anger. That is fear. But that's present fear, which I think is a little bit different than like the anxious fear of like fearing for tomorrow or fearing for the next day. So that's kind of where I'm at. If you've made it this far, it's 35 minutes. I would love to hear what you have to say. Again, I want to broaden my perspective and add as many numbers to my sequence as I can. And I think the best way to do that is through dialogue. Not that we have to pick a topic. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to debate you on anything like that. I guess it'd be a debate to see like, what do you think about my idea of a pattern, I guess, but not on any topic. I don't care what your favorite football team is. I mean, I care. I'm a Raider fan, so take what you want with that. Reach out. You can email me or text me or comment, whatever you think. I would genuinely love to hear what you have to think and love to hear what you have to say about it. Because I think together we could improve our learning. That's it.